we really raise boys and girls with the same way? I recently been observing my own children, 2 daughters and son, and began wondering about the way I raised them. The goals that I set for each of them were the same. They both had access to the same toys. My girls could play with the cars as could my son with doll. There was no division. However, I have realized that even though I raised them the same way, that each other are differently. Of course, they are each their own person with their own behavior, and there will be a difference between them all. The biggest difference that I realized was the way in which they work. I notice the girls have the tendency to multitask and take on many things at once. Even they have the central skills, it does not mean that each task will be completed to its absolute best. With boy, I have realized that they tend to focus on one task at hand and will not move on from it until it will be completed. Throughout my entire adult life, I have always pondered upon the question about the difference between man and a woman. Now I'm wondering about the difference between the two genders, but as children. I began with observing the way in which girls play and how boys play. My most recent examples of this was when I was in a park. I noticed the way in which boys slide down a slide and the way in which girls slide down. The boys were climbing up and sliding down at great speed, racing each other to see who will be the first. Not having a care in the world as long as they could slide down first. The girls, on the other hand, would stand on the bottom of the slide and ponder on the ways in which to climb up. They would fix the jacket 100 times, as well as the hats, always focusing on whatever people are looking at them. Eventually, they would get to the slide, but the slide down identity position. With the boys, what matters was the slide, and that was it. But girls was always focusing on how do I look. My observation of watching the children slide downward paused when a mother called her daughter to fix her hat and jacket so she would look better. The boys were not called upon at all. They ran around with the unbuttoned jackets, crooked hats, scarves brushing on the floor, and no one cared. The girls were expected to pause the play, to have themselves fixed so they could look better. And yet no one was a boy called on to be fixed so he could look better. I smiled to myself as I realized something. Women have it fixed into them by mothers and society to always think about how they look. No matter how smart or successful a woman is, her look is always on her mind. We focus on whatever address is appropriate. If our makeup is smart, doesn't our lipstick match to our dress? It is constant. But I have a question for you. Have you ever met a man who was passionate about a central thing and one of his main priorities was the way in which he looked? There isn't one. We are always telling ourselves to be confident, to not care about the people's opinions. But as long as you have a self-confidence, self-belief, and self-esteem, you can do anything. But women are hypocrites. From a young age, girls are made aware that they need to look at the way they present themselves. Dresses, hairbands, jewelry, and constantly being told to be careful of how they look. If this is what is constantly being fed to them as a young girl, it would be continue in their adult life. Wearing horrible tight dresses with barely birthed high heels that just make your feet hurt, and tons of makeup, even those usually don't wear any. Why do we put ourselves through such torture? Some say that this is to attract the men, but usually it is not. It is for our other female friend, so she won't just us. If you want to have an equality between the genders, it begins with raising them equally. If a girl is constantly being reminded of her looks, remind the boys as well. Otherwise, let her run around with her unbuttoned jacket and crooked hat, which all that matter being her happiness and that slight. Of course, there will be moments in our life when we want to dress up and put on those heels because we feel beautiful, and this is fine. I do this myself as well. But there's also days where you just won't go down the slides without the care in the world. And this is what we need to keep in mind. I hope you enjoy it. Put thumbs up if you're liking, and see you soon. Bye!